Hey y'all, it's Alex, and this is my video for Ashley Wylde's gender tag, which is something that I've been meaning to do for a couple of years now. This is a project that Ashley Wylde first posted about 5 years ago in 2015. I will link a card up for their channel to see what they're doing with that project, since that's something that a lot of YouTubers, no matter what gender identity, have been posted about, and I really liked the questions that she came up with, and so I wanted to do that for my own video. So how the gender tag works is it's 10 different questions regarding gender identity and expression, and I am just going to share mine with you. If you want to do this yourself, I will link their website in the description below so that you can check that out and participate if you would like to. Again, this is something that started out in 2015, but I feel like that's even still relevant even now. So, first question is, how do you self-identify your gender, and what does that definition mean to you? Which for me honestly is a bit tricky, because I feel like being non-binary sometimes is synonymous with let's make it a bit tricky, at least looking at how cis society often sees us. So figuring out my own gender identity definitely took me a while, and it took me a lot of looking into things and kind of getting fascinated with things and doing a lot of research, and then realizing, oh hey, that's totally me. It's not just I'm interested in that, but it's, oh, I identify with that. So the labels that I personally use, mostly umbrella terms. So I use non-binary and I use genderqueer as a subset of that, which basically just means the same thing. Neither male nor female, a little bit in between, somewhere on that wibbly wobbly gender spectrum, like whatever that means. So which honestly for me that keeps changing. I at first didn't really adapt the label transgender at all for myself, mostly because I was worried about taking up space and wasn't quite sure if I should be taking up space where I was, and had to kind of sort all of that out. But as things went on, I definitely noticed that this is a label that really fits for me, and same for the label transmasculine, which doesn't mean I don't identify as a trans man, but it definitely means more masculine of center, if you're looking at gender as a spectrum. So those are terms that just kind of fit for me, but honestly they are also ever changing. The weird thing about labels is, yeah, people like to use them to categorize, but they also constantly evolve, and yes, they give us community and terms to talk about, but they also give us things to question and constantly explore. So that's the really cool thing about that. Okay, second question is, what pronouns honor you? For me, those pronouns are they, them pronouns. I first came out as non-binary in early 2018, and they, them pronouns just fit me the most. I'm also okay with he, him, and generally, I'm more okay with being read as masculine than as feminine, but overall, they, them pronouns, please. Question 3 is, describe the style of clothing you most often wear. For me, honestly, that's been a huge evolution. At first, I was definitely much more femme presenting, though I figured out over the years that for me, that really was a mask that I was putting on. Specifically, being a teacher and feeling like I had to kind of fit into a specific mold, I dressed very, very femininely as a way to overcompensate, as a way to essentially be straight passing, whatever that means, right? Because passing, yeah, that's a thing. But then that kind of changed as I explored gender a little bit more and kind of allowed myself to mess with what I wanted to look like in my gender presentation. I started incorporating more and more masculine pieces into my wardrobe. I discovered pockets, which are amazing, so now I'm just kind of refusing. Oh, by the way, if you're hearing someone laughing in the back, that's my wife laughing at me because she's been part of this whole journey. So anyway, like, discovering pockets is revolutionary. Like, seriously, I will not go back to tiny fake pockets that will not hold anything. The fact that I can fit my whole ass iPhone into my front pocket is amazing. So that's something that definitely was revolutionary for me. I also typically wear a binder pretty much every day, mostly because I have come to really hate bras. Like, it feels like whenever I do wear a bra or even not wear a bra, like all I can like see or feel or look at is my chest. So, but that's getting taken care of soon, but more to that in a minute. So I also am kind of looking at, once I have had top surgery, because this is where a lot of my dysphoria, like body dysphoria, comes from. I noticed that it's like really very centered. It's like, hi, chest. Yeah, that's kind of all I sometimes see, and I feel like people sometimes see. So, but once I've had top surgery, I definitely am not ruling out experimenting more with more like feminine cut shirts. Like right now I'm wearing mostly like unisex t-shirts, crew necks, hoodies, button-ups, that kind of thing. But I definitely like to experiment with that, and I love layering. That's probably one of my favorite things, and honestly it seems kind of like the trans hack to cover up any curves. So layering is my friend, as are like fun statement pieces. Like, I still really like fun jackets and nerdy shirts, and I am usually a jeans wearer, but I really like shoes. The sparklier the better. So that's definitely where I kind of experiment all over the place, and I like to kind of mash it up. Honestly, if I could pick a gender style, it probably would be gender fuck, because I like to kind of mess with that. So question 4 is, talk about your choices with body hair. How do you style your hair? Do you have facial hair? What do you choose to shave or choose not to shave? Okay, so for me, obviously, that's been an evolution. I am a non-binary person on testosterone, and one of the things, honestly, going on T that had me worried was the fact that I would be getting more body hair, and I'm genetically predisposed to be a more hairy person. And especially as someone who was kind of like raised with a lot of like shame around how they looked or had to look or were expected to look like, that was a bit of a shift for me to, at first I was really worried about that happening. I was like, okay, I'll have more hair. I don't know what I'm going to do with my leg hair or my armpits. Like, let's just see what happens. But then I also noticed that I was getting much more comfortable with it, and at this point, like, honestly, I like it. Yeah, I still like to groom and trim a lot of things, but my leg hair just gets to do its thing, and it's fine. I like it. As far as my hairstyle goes, I definitely like it short. I used to have really long hippie hair. Like, I literally looked like a Cocker Spaniel, or think first year Harry Potter Hermione. Like, that was tragically my look, but I've had short hair ever since I think 2009. Like, I never went back. I'm like, nope, we're not going there. And honestly, that's more my personal comfort, but I also really like to like kind of mess with my hair and see what I can do. So sometimes I feel like buzzing it all the way, like when we have an apocalypse going on. Apocalypse hair. Let's do the Furiosa thing. But I've also had like side shaves. I usually like my sides faded and the top longer. So right now I'm growing that back out, and I also really like to mess with color. Obviously, right now it's kind of this magenta color. Usually I like shades of purple or pink. Those kind of work best for me. I've definitely done the standard blue hair thing before. It just fades really weird on me, and so I don't like it as much. If I can make it purple, I will make it purple. Okay, next question is, talk about cosmetics. Do you choose to wear makeup? Do you paint your nails? What soaps and perfumes do you use, if any? Again, this is kind of like an evolution question for me. I used to be this kind of person who never left the house without makeup. Honestly, I even wore makeup at home. Like if I never left the house, I would still put like a whole face of makeup on, mostly because I grew up with, hey, if you don't put makeup on, you don't care about yourself. You're letting yourself go, which yeah, that's a whole nother thing. But at this point, I don't really wear makeup anymore. Like, yeah, I still have some blemishes on my face because T acne is a thing and second puberty is a thing. So I definitely moisturize a lot, and occasionally, very occasionally, I wear concealer and foundation, but typically I avoid that because I also don't like how it gets on anything. Like you can't really control where it stays. So that's something that I'm kind of not really doing anymore. I still kept a lot of my makeup just because I never know when I'll feel like playing around with it, but it's really just kind of more an experimentation than a necessity for me. Nail polish is absolutely a go for me. I often don't do it, but sometimes will, depending on how I feel about it. Sometimes I'm doing the like emo skater kid look with black nails. Sometimes it's super sparkly. I don't really feel like nail polish is gendered at all, so it's just kind of like whatever I feel like. In terms of soaps and body washes and stuff like that and fragrances, I definitely have been experimenting a lot with that, mostly because due to body hair and more facial hair, I have to shave more often. So I've definitely been experimenting with more like masculine smelling stuff. And found I really like some of it, especially if it smells like bergamot or lavender. Like those are my go-to smells. Like I love those. But again, I kind of like shop all across the aisle. Like I'll buy like a men's deodorant, but I'll buy like a sugar scrub that's like fruity smelling or something like that. So that kind of comes and goes, and I like to like just smell good. Just, yeah, be smelling good. The next question is, have you experienced being misgendered? And if so, how often? So again, realities of the non-binary life, unfortunately, is I get misgendered all the time. It kind of sucks. Like I wear this little pronoun necklace all the time, but most of the time people don't seem to notice or just have that like grammatical hang up, whatever. I'm an English teacher. I get in arguments with people about that because they're wrong. I have a degree in this. I'm right. So anyway, but in terms of daily misgendering, most of it comes typically from people who don't know me. My family and friends are usually really good about it, though my mom's side of the family and my like parents still live in Germany, and so being misgendered is kind of the go-to because of how gendered German is as a language, and they try, but they have a really hard time with it. Like they're still in that kind of, I know my mom's definitely is in that kind of parental fixed mindset of, hey, I gave you this name, like this is what I have always called you. And that's been difficult. So I feel like she's working on this, but it's definitely a struggle. In terms of being misgendered here, again, I'm a teacher, so depending on the day, some of my students will definitely misgender me, and honestly, I don't think it's intentional from them, because I will correct them and they'll go like, oh yeah, sorry, I messed up, and that's totally fine, honestly. They're usually much better. It's sometimes some of my colleagues who are still visibly struggling. A lot of them are great, but some colleagues and some parents are definitely struggling with that, and then you get the standard, you know, when you're out and about and people are like, oh, hey ladies, and it's like, not a lady. Like, I feel like now that I've been on tea for a while, like, it happens less frequently, and sometimes it switches where people are like, oh yeah, his order is this, and I'm like, yeah, whatever, that's fine. Again, like, being mistakenly read for male or as a trans male is better than the opposite, so the other side of the spectrum for me. But it's just something that I'm still dealing with and kind of trying to figure out better ways to like advocate for myself, because for me it's always easier to correct other people when they're misgendering someone else that I'm with or even not with. That's not a problem, but speaking up for yourself is stupidly hard for whatever reason. Yeah. And this is editor me talking because I realized I skipped one of the questions, which is question 6. Have you experienced dysphoria? If so, how does it affect you? Which I kind of addressed when I talked about my chest and top surgery, but most of it for me comes definitely from that area. Especially now that I'm taking tea, a lot of the other things are getting more alleviated, especially as like fat is redistributing. I definitely am noticing like stuff like my thighs are not as curvy as they were at the very beginning, and some other things like my shoulders getting broader, muscles showing up differently. So that's definitely a good thing. Dysphoria really for me has always been a mix between dysphoria and dysmorphia, where it's like not totally clear how much of this is gender-related dysphoria and how much is just conditioned things like, oh, this is how you should look like, and where things like fat phobia and shaming and stuff like that come into place. So that's always been kind of like a tricky balance for me to find. But again, I am going to have top surgery in 10 days. I'm really, really excited about that and to see like where that part of my journey brings me. So that's that part for dysphoria and sudden background change. So, talk about children. Are you interested in having children? Would you want to carry a child if that were an option? Do you want to be the primary caretaker of any children you may have? Okay, so here's the thing. Even before I came out as non-binary, I knew I didn't want children. And honestly, it's at the point where not only do I never want anything to do with the biological process of having children, bearing children, raising tiny children. Like, I literally don't know what to do with kids under 10. They're not quite, like, I don't know what to do with them. I don't have a lot of young kiddos in my family. But it's honestly more like a phobia for me, where it's just like, oh, hell no, this is not happening. It's also genetically, like, I have a blood clotting disease that really makes it pretty much impossible for me to be pregnant / be like successful and healthy as a pregnant person. So that's not going to happen. But even that notwithstanding, I never would like any children. I can't totally rule out ever like adopting or whatever, but honestly I feel like as a teacher, that's kind of where I get my nurturer self out there and try to do my best. And I have cats, and honestly sometimes they're just as annoying as children, so I'm good there. Question number 9 is talk about money, which is kind of an interesting question on this list, but we'll get to that in a minute. Is it important to you to provide for a family financially if you choose to have one? Is it important to you that you earn more than any partner you may have? Do you prefer to pay for things like dates? Are you uncomfortable when others pay for you or offer to pay for you? Okay, this is a bit of a tricky question, and for me, honestly, not a gendered question, though I can see why that's on the list, because there are just so many social and societal expectations when it comes to who pays for what, and expectations of like being the breadwinner and all of that gendered stuff. For me, honestly, it's much more about independence. Like, that's super important for me. Like, I have been in the role where I was incredibly dependent on another person, and that turned into a really, really toxic situation. So I feel like I'm almost kind of programmed to try and avoid that, and sometimes to my detriment. Like, it's really hard for me to like ask for help or accept for help, especially financially. That's definitely a hurdle. It's something I've gotten better at, but I feel like part of it is having grown up with some financial instability and insecurity, and then being the kind of person I am. Like I immigrated to the US when I was 20, and I pretty much had to make stuff work for myself or it just wouldn't happen, and that's still very much my mindset. So when it comes to partnerships and dates and all of those types of things, I am totally down with like people splitting bills for dates, or I can pay for it, the other person can pay for it, as long as there's communication. Honestly, that kind of needs to be the basis of making sure like everyone is okay with what's going on. That's honestly the foundation for me and what really matters for me. In a household, like I personally like want to make sure I'm having at least like half the share of things, because again, otherwise like I feel like I'm not contributing enough, or it's somehow uneven, which happens. Like again, I'm an educator, I don't necessarily make the most money, but I feel like that again needs to be like coordinated well and done via communication. I'm definitely not a fan of like the rigorous types of partnerships where people have like joint accounts or they don't have their own bank account. Like that kind of horrifies me, honestly, because autonomy, I feel like, is super important in any relationship, whether that's a marriage, a family, a partnership, you're just dating someone. Like that's just really important. And honestly, it took me a little while to learn and accept too that when someone is offering to like pay for like dinner, for example, or do something nice just because they want to. Like when I started my top surgery fund, I was really worried about being presumptuous or pressuring people into something, and a lot of friends were like, hey, we wouldn't donate to this if we didn't want to and if we weren't able to. So that was definitely something that came up. And then the final question is, anything else you want to share about your experience with gender? And frankly, for me, that gender and the exploration of gender is very much a journey. It's very much in flux. And I feel like that's a good thing to explore and embrace exploring. Because honestly, for me, again, I came out as non-binary officially in 2018, but I had kind of been thinking about and pondering that idea for years before, probably even like since my childhood. There were definitely things that now in retrospect really click for me, and at the time I wasn't even really aware of. So that's to say, like when I first came out, I didn't know that I wanted things like top surgery, or that I necessarily like experienced dysphoria, which later on became clear, like, oh yeah, that's what that is. This is why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. So honestly, like my suggestion to anyone who is questioning things is that that's really like, not only is that okay, but that's a good thing. Like you're not going to have all of the answers right from the beginning, and it's okay to try things out and see where they go and see where they lead you. So yeah, anyway, that is my entry to the gender tag. Again, if you want to participate in this, definitely check out Ashley Wylde's channel and her website on this. And again, for me, go ahead and follow me on Twitter or Instagram, or subscribe to this YouTube channel. I will be documenting mostly my top surgery journey in coming videos, since I'm about 10 days away, so 10 days. So that's what's going to come from me, and I'm aiming to post content every Tuesday and Thursday for the time being, probably with the exception of top surgery recovery, but we'll get there. Anyway, thank you for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and I will see you on Thursday.